Have you ever thought about if there's a smarter way to do things than just this whole take it, make it, trash it cycle we have going on?
Yeah, yeah.
What if we could, keep things in play longer, make things last, kind of like a continuous loop of reusing and regenerating?
Yeah.
That's the whole idea behind the circular economy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so today we're diving deep into how one industry is really changing how it does things to fit this more sustainable model.
Well, it's interesting you say that. It's a really fascinating case study, actually. We're going to be looking at equipment leasing,
Right.
an industry that most people, I think, associate with, big machinery and complicated contracts.
Right.
But it's actually becoming, surprisingly, like a central player in this whole circular economy idea.
You're telling me when I think eco-friendly, I'm not picturing bulldozers and server farms,
Right.
But we've got this article from the Ray Card. It's called How the Future of Equipment Leasing is Recommerce and the Circular Economy. And it makes a really strong case for it, honestly.
It really does. It challenges a lot of assumptions. The way I see it, leasing in itself already kind of leans towards circularity, right? It's always been about getting the most you can out of something over its lifespan.
Right.
But recommerce, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay, so for those of us who don't speak fluent industry jargon, break down this recommerce thing for us. What's the big deal with it?
So basically, it's like giving used equipment another shot, a second life, sometimes even a third or fourth. So instead of, a piece of equipment, it gets to the end of its lease, and then it's just sitting around collecting dust. It gets refurbished, maybe even gets a little upgrade, and then it's leased out again to someone else who needs it.
So it's like a revolving door of equipment, right? It just keeps finding new purpose and getting its value out over time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the thing is, this isn't just some feel-good sustainability thing.
Right.
There's a real business case here. One of the big takeaways from the article is that recommerce opens up these whole new ways for these leasing companies to make money.
Oh, okay.
Traditionally, they made most of their money up front, during that first lease,
Right, right.
But with this recommerce thing, they can essentially lease out that same equipment multiple times. Wow.
So they're making money long after that first contract's over.
Yeah. So it's the gift that keeps on giving.
Exactly.
For their bottom line and for the planet, which is great. That's a win-win that you just don't see often enough, I feel like, in the business world.
You don't. And what's really interesting is that this whole shift, it lines up with this growing focus on ESG metrics.
Right.
Environmental, social, and governance.
Yeah.
Businesses are feeling the pressure now more than ever to show they're serious about sustainability.
It's not just about looking good anymore. Investors and consumers they're demanding action, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that is why recommerce is so smart.
Okay.
It lets companies, especially the ones in fields with high equipment turnover, construction or the tech industry.
Right. They can make an actual real impact on their environmental footprint. And at the same time, they're appealing to this growing demand for sustainable practices.
Wouldn't it be cheaper, though, to just keep making new equipment?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Where's the financial incentive for companies to actually go the recommerce route? Beyond just looking good for ESG,
Well, that's where the article really gets into the details of walkaway lease structures, which are they're getting really popular in recommerce.
Sure.
And it really shakes up that traditional way of doing things. At the end of a lease, the person leasing is often stuck with this depreciated asset.
Okay, I'm interested now. Tell me more about these walkaway leases. How do they actually work?
So essentially, they give the person leasing the option to just, walk away from the equipment when the lease is up.
Okay.
The leasing company, they take it back, but they're not worried because they know they can fix it up.
Got it.
Refurbish it and then lease it out again through, this whole recommerce thing.
Right, right.
And this is great because it reduces the financial risk for the person leasing.
Okay.
And it makes leasing a much more attractive option compared to buying, especially when you're talking about equipment that might become obsolete quickly because technology moves so fast these days.
So it sounds like these walkaway leases really make things interesting for companies thinking about, getting into recommerce.
Yeah.
But what about from the leasing company's point of view? I imagine there's got to be some logistical headaches.
Yeah.
Right? Dealing with all that used equipment.
Oh, absolutely. The article, it doesn't sugarcoat that at all. Logistics is a big one.
Yeah.
You got to think about it, right? You're dealing with potentially thousands of pieces of equipment, each one with its own maintenance history, how much it's been used, when it needs to be refurbished.
Right.
It's a whole intricate dance, keeping track of all those assets across their entire life cycle.
Makes sense. It's not as simple as like slapping a new coat of paint on a bulldozer and calling it good.
Exactly. And that leads us to another challenge, refurbishment standards.
Right.
Especially in fields like healthcare or aviation, where, safety is absolutely critical.
Oh.
You can't mess around there. Making sure that refurbished equipment is held to the same high standards as brand new equipment, it's essential.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes a really solid system of checks and balances.
So how do these leasing companies, how do they make sure that level of quality and reliability is there when they're dealing with used equipment, I mean?
Well, this is where technology comes in a big way.
Okay.
Like asset tracking systems, they're getting really, really sophisticated. They let companies keep these detailed records for every single piece of equipment.
Right.
Think about it. You could track an asset's entire life story.
Wow.
From the day it was made to every time it was leased out, every maintenance check.
That's amazing.
Even how many times it's been refurbished.
So it's like total transparency, almost like a digital passport for every piece of equipment.
Yeah, exactly.
That would definitely build a lot of trust with people who might be on the fence about using refurbished things.
For sure. And the article even talks about like blockchain technology and how that could be used to make things even more transparent and secure.
Okay, now we're getting into some really futuristic stuff. Blockchain seems to be everywhere you look these days. How does that even apply to like used bulldozers and medical equipment?
Okay, imagine this. A permanent record of an asset's whole history, from the very beginning to its condition right now.
Okay.
That's what blockchain could do. Every transaction, every repair, every refurbishment,
Yeah.
it's all logged on this permanent record. It can't be messed with.
Wow.
That creates a level of trust and transparency you just wouldn't believe.
So it's like an unbreakable chain of custody for each piece of equipment, which has got to be super important in those industries with strict rules and regulations, like we were talking about.
Absolutely. It takes out a lot of the guesswork and the risk that comes with buying used.
Right. No.
Companies can feel good about using Recommerce because they have a reliable history of that asset.
It seems like technology really is the key here to unlocking the full potential of this whole Recommerce thing. It's not just about tracking and transparency, though, is it?
No.
Didn't the article mention something about the Internet of Things, too? IoT.
It did. One of the most interesting things happening in Recommerce is that they're starting to put IoT sensors right into the equipment.
Wow.
Imagine real-time data coming in from those sensors telling you exactly how the equipment is doing, how it's being used, even if it's about to need maintenance.
Okay, so instead of just relying on like scheduled checks, which, might not always catch things in time.
Right.
You've got this constant stream of information about how healthy the equipment is.
Yeah.
That sounds incredibly valuable.
It is. It allows for what they call predictive maintenance, which is a total game changer. By looking at the data from the IoT sensors, with algorithms and whatnot,
Yeah.
they can actually predict when a piece of equipment is going to need some attention.
That's amazing. It's like having a crystal ball for your equipment. You can take care of problems before they even happen.
Exactly.
Less downtime. You can make things last longer.
Yeah. And when it is time for refurbishment, all that data from the IoT sensors, it helps make the process so much better.
Right.
You know exactly what needs to be fixed, what needs to be replaced. You can optimize everything so you're getting the most value out of that equipment.
It's amazing, isn't it, how these technologies like IoT and all this predictive analytics stuff are totally changing the game for Recommerce.
Yeah.
It's not just guessing anymore. It's a science now based on data to make things last longer and be more valuable. It makes you wonder, how will this change the way they even design and make equipment in the future?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
And it brings up a really important point.
Okay.
Recommerce isn't just about changing how businesses do things.
Right.
It's about rethinking the entire life of a piece of equipment.
Okay.
If we already know something's going to have multiple lives, potentially, right,
Yeah.
with different users and for different things,
Right.
how can we design it from the get-go to be more durable, more modular, easier to repair and upgrade?
It's like building in adaptability and like longevity from the start.
Exactly. It's about moving away from this idea of like planned obsolescence.
Yeah.
Where things are made to break down so you have to buy a new one.
Right, right.
We need to move toward a model of circular design.
Okay.
Where products are made to be taken apart,
Right.
their parts reused or repurposed.
Right, so less waste.
Exactly. Maximizing how efficiently we use resources.
This feels like a really big moment, a
Yeah.
real turning point. We've talked about the money aspect, the environmental reasons, and now with all this tech, it really seems like everything's pointing to this more circular future.
It does, doesn't it? And what's really exciting is that this goes way beyond just equipment leasing.
Oh.
These ideas we've been talking about, recommerce, circular design, using things for as long as possible, it applies to pretty much every industry out there.
So it's not just about bulldozers and server farms and all that.
Right.
It's about changing how we think about everything we use.
That's it.
Clothes, electronics, even buildings, right?
Exactly. It's about fundamentally changing our relationship with the things we use every single day, moving away from that linear take, make, trash model, and embracing the circular way of doing things. Reduce, reuse, repair, recycle.
Love that.
And like we've seen with the whole equipment leasing thing, it's not just good for the planet, it makes financial sense too.
Absolutely. It's been amazing to dive deep into this whole world of recommerce with you. Who knew an industry that most people don't even think about could be like a leader for change?
I know, it's pretty cool.
As we wrap up here, any final thoughts for our listeners?
Here's something to think about, right? In equipment leasing, an industry not exactly known for being super quick to change can figure out how to thrive in this circular economy. What's stopping other industries from doing the same thing?
That's a great point to end on. It's a call to action for all of us, right? Whether you're a business owner, a consumer, or even involved in making policy, we need to rethink what we think we know, challenge the way things have always been done, and embrace the possibilities of a more sustainable future. And as we've seen from this deep dive, it's not just a pipe dream anymore. It's happening.